What if one simple choice could change the course of your entire life? Clara Bennett was 29, but her life had weathered her like the cliffs of her coastal Maine town, each day carving deeper scars into her soul. Her existence was a grueling cycle. 16-hour shifts at the Seafarer's Haven, night classes for an accounting degree she scraped to fund, and stolen moments at her mother's bedside, wherein oxygen tanks hummed mark time like a dirge. The diner, perched on a storm-lashed cliff in a town forsaken by progress, reeked of fried clams, damp wood, and quiet despair. Its patrons were a rugged mosaic. Fishermen with hands like leather, truckers with eyes dulled by endless roads, and tourists who'd strayed from brighter shores. Clara's world was a tightrope over a chasm of $12,000 in medical debt, $4,500 in back rent, and a $2,500 tuition payment that loomed like a guillotine. Her chestnut hair, always knotted in a messy bun, framed a face that held a fragile beauty, though exhaustion had dulled its glow. Her hazel eyes, once ablaze with ambition, now burned with stubborn defiance, like a lighthouse in a hurricane. Her hands, scarred from burns and cuts, were a map of her toil, each mark a chapter of survival. Clara had grown up in this town, raised by her grandmother, Marjorie Hale, a seamstress who'd stitched dresses for pennies and lived by an unyielding moral code. "Honesty is your refuge, Clara," Marjorie would say, her voice thick with the weight of her own struggles. "It's the one thing that stands when the world betrays you." Marjorie's death 5 years ago had left Clara adrift, and her mother Grace's diagnosis, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, had tethered her to a life of sacrifice. As a girl, Clara had been a wildfire of dreams. She'd spent dawns on the cliffs, sketching the sea's endless faces, its rage, its calm, its secrets. Her charcoal-stained fingers had woven worlds she ached to inhabit. At 16, her painting of the harbor, a tempest of blues and grays, won a local contest and hung in the town hall until flood reduced it to ruin. She hadn't painted since, her sketchbook hidden under her mattress, its pages curling like her fading hopes. Accounting was her lifeline now. Practical, stable, a path to a future where she could breathe. She had a gift for numbers, her mind slicing through ledgers with a precision that stunned her professors. But every spreadsheet felt like a betrayal of the girl who'd once seen the world in colors, not calculations. Grace was Clara's heart and her burden. At 62, her mother was a ghost of the woman who'd once twirled Clara in their kitchen, her soft Maine accent lilting as she sang folk songs. Now, her hands trembled too much to thread a needle, her breath came in shallow gasps, and her guilt at being a burden was a silent wound. Their bond was fierce. Late-night talks over chamomile tea, Grace's stories of sewing costumes for local theater in her youth, Clara's unspoken vow to keep her mother alive. But the hospital bills were a relentless tide, each one eroding Clara's resolve. The Sapphires' call. It was a Tuesday night, the rain hammering the diner's roof like a war drum. The place was nearly empty, save for a couple bickering over a cold lobster roll in booth 3 and a trucker muttering into his 8 coffee at the counter. Clara was wiping down tables, her sneakers sticking to linoleum, when she saw it. A navy velvet box tucked into the corner of booth 6. Her pulse surged. The booth had been occupied earlier by a woman in an emerald coat, her elegance a jarring note in the diner's decay. She left 3 hours ago, her tip generous but her presence fleeting. No one else had sat there since. Clara picked up the box, its softness alien in her callous hands. She glanced around. The couple was lost in their spat, the trucker in his thoughts. She opened it, and her breath caught. Inside was a Cartier sapphire ring, its deep blue stone framed by diamonds that danced in the diner's flickering light. Clara's heart thundered. She'd served enough wealthy tourists to know this was no trinket. It was a fortune. $150,000, maybe $350,000. Her mind spun. She could sell it, clear Grace's medical bills, pay her tuition, rent a studio where she could paint again. She could escape this town, its cliffs, its suffocating sea. But Marjorie's voice surged like a wave. Honesty is your refuge. Clara's fingers tightened, her nails biting her palms. She heard Walt, her manager, cursing from behind the counter, his gravelly voice griping about the slow night. Walt was a bear of man, his face weathered by cigarettes and regret. He'd been kind to Clara, extra shifts when she was desperate, leftovers when she hadn't eaten. But he wasn't above bending rules. She walked him, her legs heavy, her resolve fraying. "Found this in booth 6, she said, sliding the box across the counter. Walt opened it, his eyes widening. "Good Lord, Clara. You sure you want to turn this in? No one's coming back tonight. This could change your life." Clara's stomach churned. She saw Grace's pale face, the stack of bills on her kitchen table, the sketchbook she hadn't touched in years. "It's not mine," she said, her voice steady but thin. "Log it in the lost and found." Walt snorted, shaking his head. "You're too damn good, kid." He tossed the box into the locked drawer, and Clara returned to her tables, the rain's rhythm a relentless drumbeat. She finished her shift, her jacket soaked as she trudged home to the cramped apartment she shared with Grace. Her mother was asleep, the oxygen tanks hum a mournful lullaby. Clara tucked a blanket over her, the weight of her choice settling like lead in her bones. She'd done the right thing. But as she lay awake, staring at the ceiling's peeling paint, she wondered if righteousness would ever fill the emptiness inside her. Characters that live. Clara wasn't always this broken. As a child, she'd been fearless, climbing cliffs to sketch the sunrise, her laughter mingling with the gulls' cries. She'd dreamed of art school in Boston, of galleries filled with her seascapes. Marjorie had fueled those dreams, her hands steady as she sewed, her stories of her youth in Portland painting pictures of a world Clara longed to see. Marjorie's death at 24 was a wound that never healed, and Grace's illness a year later was a chain. Clara loved her mother with a devotion that burned Grace, with her soft accent and memories of sewing costumes for local theater. Now, Grace's frailty was a constant ache, her pride in Clara a quiet fire that kept her daughter going. The Seafarer's Haven was Clara's second skin. Walt, despite his gruffness, was a reluctant protector, slipping her cash tips when she was short, winking when she took home scraps. Libby, her co-worker, was her spark of light. At 22, Libby was a firecracker, blonde hair dyed with streaks of green, sharp wit, dreams of becoming a fashion designer in New York. "You're meant for more than this, Clara," Libby would say, her eyes fierce. Clara brushed it off, but Libby's faith was a lifeline. The diner's regulars were a cast of their own. Old Man Silas, a fisherman who tipped in coins and tales of storms. Gia, the line cook whose Italian arias filled the kitchen. Ezra, the busboy who blushed at Clara's smile. Ruth, a retired teacher who left notes of encouragement with her tips. Gideon, a retired shipbuilder who sketched boats on napkins and slipped them to Clara, a silent nod to her lost art. And Hazel, a single mother who worked weekends, her tired smile a mirror of Clara's own. The town was a living thing, bleak, stubborn, scarred by the sea. Its cliffs were etched by centuries of wind, its streets lined with shuttered stores and faded dreams. The ocean was its heart, both beautiful and brutal, its waves whispering tales of shipwrecks and lost loves. As a girl, Clara had believed in its magic. Now, it was a mirror of her trapped soul. New characters enriched Clara's world. Levi, a 32-year-old journalist who frequented the diner, carried a notebook filled with stories of the town's forgotten corners. His warm eyes and slight limp from a childhood accident hid a quiet strength. His late-night talks with Clara over coffee were a tentative bridge, a flicker of connection in her walled-off life. Another figure emerged, Sage, a reclusive artist who lived in a cliffside shack, her abstract paintings rumored to hide coded messages. Sage's cryptic advice, "Trust the sea, but not its gifts," stirred Clara's unease about the ring. A third character, Delilah, a librarian with a knack for uncovering old records, offered Clara clues about the town's past, hinting at secrets tied to the cliffs. The tide shifts. The next morning, Clara was back at the diner, her sneakers damp, her body aching from sleeplessness. The rain hadn't stopped, and the place was alive with chaos. Truckers huddling over coffee, a family of tourists whining about soggy pancakes. Clara was refilling pots when Walt waved her over. "Someone's here for that ring," he said, nodding toward a woman at the counter. She was striking, in her late 60s, with silver hair swept into a chignon and an emerald coat. that screamed old money. Her name was Mrs. Beatrice Langley, and her voice was warm but precise, like a cello played softly. "I believe you found my ring," she said, her blue eyes locking onto Clara's with an intensity that made her shift. Clara retrieved the box from the lost and found, her hand steady despite the flutter in her chest. Mrs. Langley opened it, her fingers brushing the sapphire. "This was my mother's," she said, her voice catching. "I thought I'd lost her forever." She pulled out $900 bills, crisp and heavy. "For your honesty," Clara hesitated, pride warring with desperation. The thought of Grace's latest bill, $12, $500, made her take the money. "Thank you, ma'am," she said, pocketing it. Mrs. Langley's smile held a glint Clara couldn't read. And then she was gone, the diner's bell chiming behind her. Clara thought it was over. But the next day, as she scrubbed the counter during a lull, the door swung open and a man in a tailored suit stepped in. He was tall, his face carved from stone, a black briefcase in hand. The diner went silent, forks pausing mid-bite. He approached Clara, his voice low and clipped. "Miss Bennett? I'm with Mrs. Langley. She asked me to deliver this." He slid a sleek black envelope across the counter and vanished into the storm. Clara's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a black credit card, its surface embossed with Aegis. A note in elegant script read, "For your honesty and for your future. Use this wisely. B. Langley." Clara's heart thundered. She'd heard of cards like this. No limit, a key to a world of private jets and penthouses. Libby, peering over her shoulder, gasped. "Clara, is this real?" "I don't know," Clara whispered, tucking the card into her pocket. That night, she sat at her kitchen table, the card glinting under the dim bulb. She could pay off everything. Grace's bills, her tuition, the rent. She could buy paints, a canvas, a dream. But why would a stranger trust her with this? Was it a gift or a debt? Levi, sharing coffee during a late shift, noticed her unease. "You look like you're carrying a secret," he said softly. Clara shrugged, but his concern lingered, a crack in her walls. Rising stakes and shadows. A week later, a letter arrived, embossed with the seal of the Beatrice Langley Foundation. It invited Clara to a private salon at Mrs. Langley's estate, a mansion perched on a cliff that dwarfed the diners. Clara borrowed a navy dress from Libby. Its fabric fraying but elegant. She felt like an imposter, but curiosity and a flicker of possibility drove her forward. The estate was a revelation. Its halls were lined with art, Monet's, Warhol's, sculptures that seemed to breathe. The salon was a gathering of artists, curators, and philanthropists, their voices a symphony of ideas Clara had only read about. Mrs. Langley greeted her like a friend, her presence both commanding and kind. Over champagne, she pulled Clara aside. "I've been watching you," she said, her voice low. "Not just at the diner. Your professors praise your mind. I found your painting in the town hall storage, a seascape, half ruined but alive. You're wasting your gift." Clara's throat tightened. "I can't afford to paint. My mother's dying. I have debt, school." "That's why I gave you the card," Mrs. Langley said. "It's not charity, it's belief. I want you to join my foundation. We need your accounting skills to keep us grounded, your vision to lift us up. You could help artists like yourself thrive." Clara's world tilted. The foundation wasn't just a job. It was a bridge between her pragmatism and her passion. But the twist came later, as they stood before a painting of a stormy sea, its waves so vivid Clara could taste the salt. "I was like you once," Mrs. Langley said, her voice heavy. "A girl with nothing, scraping by in a town like this. Someone gave me a chance, and I swore I'd pay it forward. The ring was a test, Clara. You passed." Clara's heart stuttered. The ring hadn't been lost. It had been left. Mrs. Langley had seen her struggle, her quiet strength, and chosen her. But a shadow lingered. Why her? And what did this woman, with her wealth and secrets, truly want? New subplots deepened the tension. Clara noticed a man at the salon, his face vaguely familiar, watching her from the edges of the room. Levi later told her he'd seen the same man near the diner, asking questions about Clara. Sage's cryptic warning, "Trust the sea but not its gifts," echoed in her mind. The mystery man left a note at Clara's apartment. "Ask Langley about the Sapphire Trust." Delilah, the librarian, uncovered Old Town records hinting at a scandal tied to Cliffs, a deal involving a blue stone that had enriched some and ruined others. Clara's unease grew. Was she entangled in something bigger than she knew? Another layer emerged when Clara found a hidden letter in Marjorie's old sewing box, written years ago to an unknown benefactor. It spoke of a debt tied to a blue stone and a promise to make it right. Was Marjorie connected to Mrs. Langley? Clara's trust wavered, her grandmother's legacy now a puzzle. She confided in Levi, whose investigative instincts kicked in, but his digging drew attention. Someone slashed his tires, a warning to back off. The climb and the cost. Clara joined the foundation, her life shifting like the tide. Her accounting skills streamlined budgets, securing grants for young artists. The black card cleared Grace's medical debts, paid Clara's tuition, and bought an easel, paints, and canvases that smelled of freedom. She painted again, her first piece, a cliff under a bruised sky, selling for $9,000 at a local gallery. She wept when she saw it hung, her name in bold, a piece of her soul made real. But success had a shadow. The card's power was intoxicating, but it felt like a leash. Clara used it sparingly. Grace's treatments, a community art program, scholarships for Ezra and Hazel's son. Yet whispers followed her. Co-workers at the foundation eyed her with envy, murmuring about favoritism. Libby grew distant, her jokes about Clara's fancy life sharp with hurt. Grace, recovering but frail, sensed Clara's unease. "Be careful, sweetheart," she said. "Nothing this big comes free." Clara's paintings gained traction, her seascapes drawing crowds from Portland to Boston. But the pressure produced to prove she deserved this chance was relentless. Late nights at the foundation bled into early mornings at her easel, her hands trembling from exhaustion. Mrs. Langley was a constant, mentor, friend, but also a mirror of expectations Clara feared she'd shatter. A new tension emerged. Paige, a polished art curator at the foundation with sharp smile and sharper ambitions. Paige resented Clara's rise, her whispers poisoning the air. "She's just a waitress," Paige said at a staff meeting, her voice dripping with disdain. "What does she know about art?" Clara's cheeks burned, but she held her ground, her grant proposals outshining Paige's. The rivalry pushed Clara harder, her work sharper, but it deepened her doubt. Was she enough? Another layer of comfort arose when Clara discovered a discrepancy in the foundation's books. Not her work, but a hidden trail of misallocated funds tied to Paige's projects. Confronting Paige risked everything: her job, her reputation, Mrs. Langley's trust. But Marjorie's voice echoed, "Honesty is your refuge." Clara spent nights unraveling the numbers, her findings airtight. She presented them to Mrs. Langley, her heart pounding. Paige was dismissed, her betrayal exposed, but the victory was bittersweet. Clara had proven her worth, but at the cost of enemies she hadn't sought. The mystery man's note haunted her. Levi helped her dig, uncovering whispers of the Sapphire Trust, a decades-old scandal tied to Mrs. Langley's wealth, a deal that had lifted her from poverty but ruined others. Sage's paintings, which Clara studied in secret, hinted at the same scandal, their abstract swirls hiding names and dates. Delilah's records confirmed it. A mining deal gone wrong, tied to a sapphire vein beneath the cliffs. The stakes grew personal when Clara found her apartment rummaged, her sketchbook open to a page she hadn't touched. Someone was watching her. The letter from Marjorie's sewing box suggested her grandmother had been entangled with the same forces. Had Marjorie's honesty been tested too? Levi's investigation hit a wall when he received a threatening note, urging Clara to drop her questions. Climax and revelation. The climax came at the Foundation's annual gala, a glittering affair in a seaside ballroom. Clara, in a tailored blazer she'd earned herself, presented a new grant program she designed, funding for artists from forgotten towns like hers. The room erupted in applause, donors pledging millions. Mrs. Langley took the stage, her eyes shining. "Clara Bennett is proof," she said, "that integrity and talent can change the world." This foundation thrives because of her, and so does every artist she's lifted. Later, in a quiet alcove, Mrs. Langley handed Clara a small box. Inside was a sapphire pendant, its stone a twin to the ring. "This isn't a reward," she said. "It's a reminder. You chose yourself when you chose honesty." Clara's eyes burned with tears. The pendant was trust, not wealth. But the final twist came when Clara confronted Mrs. Langley about the sapphire trust and Marjorie's letter. "I made mistakes," Mrs. Langley admitted, her voice raw. "I was young, desperate, and took a deal that hurt others. Your grandmother knew. She forgave me, helped me start anew. I've spent my life making amends. The foundation, these are my redemption." Clara saw her mentor anew, not a saint, but a woman who'd fought her own battles and chosen to lift others. The mystery man was revealed as a former partner of Mrs. Langley's, seeking to expose her past out of bitterness. Clara chose to protect her mentor, not out of blindness, but because she believed in the good Mrs. Langley had done. Sage, meeting Clara at the gala, gave her a painting, a seascape with a hidden sapphire, a nod to their shared understanding. "You're the sea's gift now," Sage said, her eyes twinkling. Delilah, quietly present, handed Clara a final record, a letter from Marjorie to Mrs. Langley, thanking her for a second chance. The puzzle was complete. Marjorie's honesty had saved Mrs. Langley, just as Clara's had saved herself. A clear, emotional ending. 15 years later, Clara stood on the cliff outside the seafarer's haven, the wind weaving through her unbound hair. She'd left the diner long ago, but she'd returned one last time, her old apron in hand. The sea stretched before her, vast and alive, no longer a cage but a muse. Her paintings were in galleries across the world, her name synonymous with seascapes that captured the soul of the coast. Grace, now strong enough to walk the cliffs, lived in a cottage Clara had bought, her laughter filling rooms once heavy with fear. The foundation flourished, its programs reaching thousands, Clara's vision at heartbeat. Mrs. Langley was family now, their bond forged in late-night talks and shared dreams. Clara had mended things with Libby, funding her friend's fashion line in New York, their friendship reborn in honesty. Levi had become her husband, his quiet strength a steady anchor. They'd married on the cliffs, a small ceremony with Grace, Libby, and Mrs. Langley. The sea their witness. Their daughter, Marjorie, named for her great-grandmother, was 4, her giggles a melody in Clara's life. Their son, Silas, 2, toddled after his sister, his tiny hands smudging paint on everything. The black card, rarely used, was a tool of quiet good, art classes for kids, medical care for neighbors, scholarships in Marjorie's and Sage's names. Its power was what it had unlocked. Clara's belief in herself. Clara had opened her own gallery in the town, a beacon for local artists. Its first exhibit was dedicated to Marjorie and Sage. Their works hung beside Clara's, a bridge between past and present. Grace attended, her eyes bright with pride. Mrs. Langley beside her, a quiet smile on her face. Libby was there, her green hair now a vibrant magenta, her laughter filling the room. Levi stood by Clara, Marjorie, and Silas in his arms, their joy a living canvas. Walt, Gia, Ezra, Ruth, Gideon, Hazel, and Delilah filled the gallery, their presence a testament to the community Clara had woven. As the sun sank, painting the sky in hues of amber and violet, Clara tossed her apron into the waves. It floated, then sank, carried away by the tide. Tears streamed down her face, not from loss, but from the fullness of her heart. She'd chosen honesty when it felt like a wound, and it had led her here, a life where she wasn't just surviving, but soaring. The pendant at her neck gleamed, a refuge and a vow. Clara opened her sketchbook, her fingers steady as she drew the sea's endless dance, Marjorie's tiny hand adding a smudge of joy, Silas's laughter echoing. The stars emerged, each a spark of tomorrow. She was no longer the waitress who scrubbed tables, nor the artist who'd lost her way. She was Clara Bennett, creator, survivor, dreamer. As she walked toward the cottage, where Grace waited with tea, Mrs. Langley with stories, Levi with love, and Marjorie and Silas with laughter, the town's lights twinkled below, a constellation of lives she touched. Her story wasn't just hers. It was theirs, a tapestry of honesty, resilience, and love. And it was only beginning.